What is perfection? A great smile? A chiseled jawline? The stamina to run fast? A wicked side? Now imagine if you could choose and create. But could you really handle perfection?
Well, if you didn't have any personality and you gave Frankenhottie one to match, then yeah, probably. Hey guys, welcome back to Tanner's Books and Beyond, and today I'm going to rage. Now, if you've been following my stuff for the past few months, you'll know that I was really hyped to read Eve and Adam by K.A. Applegate and Michael Grant, who are kind of two of my favorite authors. I really like the cover, I really like the premise of the book, and I finally got around to reading it at the tail end of August. And I was so incredibly underwhelmed. So it may not be entirely deserving of its rage, maybe it's just because I was so hyped to read it in the first place, but yeah, this is not that great of a book. I will say right now that I'm probably going to be talking about spoilers in this because I may not be able to help myself. I'm also going to be talking about things that the book thinks are spoilers and gives such heavy weight to when they happen in the narrative, but in reality they're really not, because everyone who picks up the book knows they're going to happen, or they're just so heavily telegraphed from the first few chapters that it's not even any kind of shock once they're officially revealed. Also, I'll probably be cursing a lot in this video because I cannot contain myself. Alright, so the plot goes like this. There's a teenage girl named Eve, obviously, who gets hit by a car and horribly wounded. She's then whisked away by her mother to her super secret lab where she does all sorts of sciencey things and medical things and biological things and like creates all these cures for random diseases and stuff and basically is saving the world through science. And it's all great, but Eve has a really bad relationship with her mother because she is always working at the science lab, and the science lab is described as like this huge towering building monstrosity off the coast of San Francisco, and it's like, it sounds like something out of Lord of the Rings. It just sounds ridiculous. Anyways, Eve is being kept at the lab and monitored by her mother, and she starts getting really bored because she's been stuck there for like 3 weeks. So her mom gives her permission to play around with this computer program simulation where she's able to supposedly create this perfect boy, this perfect, excellent boyfriend, genetically engineered to be an excellent Frank in sexy pants. Meanwhile, a disgruntled ward of Eve's mother has been sneaking around the company, trying to dig up dirt on them so that he can tear them all down because he wants revenge for his parents, which he thinks Eve's mother killed, and he wants revenge just on principle because he believes they're carrying out these horrible experiments behind the scenes and out of the public eye. So eventually, Solo and Eve's paths cross, and they're forced to consider what sacrifices need to be made in the name of science and in the name of helping people with science, even if that means that a few people have to suffer for it. So that sounds interesting, right? I thought so, that's why I got the book. And you know, it isn't all bad. There are some interesting parts going through it. For example, the main thing was the morality questions about the ethics and the morals of scientific advancement and what the costs might be and whether they're worth it. Whether experimentations on a few, like for example, human guinea pigs could possibly end up saving the lives of billions of people everywhere because of a disease that other companies wouldn't be interested in curing simply because it wouldn't bring them a profit. So those morality questions are really interesting, and the characters do discuss them quite often, but the problem is the characters through and through. It's the main issue I have with this book, is the characters have no personalities beyond discussing these ethical questions. Like, you have a few small character traits that can help define them. For example, Solo is obsessed with revenge, and Eve is Eve is your standard cliched, oh, I'm not like other girls, teenage girl that you would expect to find in really trite young adult books. Like, she even gets that sequence of paragraphs where it's like, oh, I'm not beautiful in the standard way, but everyone else acts like I'm pretty, so I guess I am pretty. At least they make her more intellectual than some of the worser examples that I could think of, but the only time she gets to actually drop that knowledge is when she's giving exposition to her best friend, or when she's doing the narration to herself, or when she's discussing the ethical questions. We hardly ever get to attach ourselves to Eve as a character. Eve is simply a mouthpiece for one side of the argument, and she is paired romantically, by the way. She's forcibly paired with Solo, who is the mouthpiece for the opposite side of the argument. And they're like, oh, we should do this, oh, we should do this, no. Gah! And then here's the first spoiler, which isn't even a spoiler because the book pretty much says right on the back cover that's going to happen. It turns out that Frankenhottie that Eve has been making, he's actually a real person, and the simulator was actually a device that is actually creating the perfect boy. So when Eve escapes with Solo, because here's the second spoiler, they find out evidence of actual really bad experiments going on at the company. They hightail it out of there, and then Eve's mom, she activates Adam, and so he's this genetically engineered, perfect boy. He has never existed until now. He's fully formed in like his late teens or whatever, and his very first thought, in his very first POV chapter, the first thought he ever has in his existence is, I am in love with Eve. And that's absolute BS, because his first thought should have been, ah! Sensory awareness is hell! Sounds are reverberating inside my skull! I've been blinded by visual stimuli! Ah! So yeah, instead of having a really interesting character who is literally reacting to everything around him for the first time and trying to deal with the fact that he is a genetically engineered human being, instead you have Frankenbland going around the city, causing orgasms around everyone he walks by because he's just so fucking hot. He wanders around the city until he basically bumps into Eve and he's like, hello Eve, I'm Adam. I've been looking for you because I love you. And in her mind she's thinking, oh, he's hot. But eventually she starts thinking, oh no, he's too hot. She can't even bump into him because the physical contact nearly makes her loins explode. Eventually the two of them end up in a hospital. Eve has to go off to do some other stuff. Adam is sitting there and the doctors see him and they're like, dang, that boy is so supernaturally sexy that we should obviously kidnap him, convince him he needs to get a physical done, just so we can look at him with his shirt off. That's just fucking creepy! So for the first 2/3 of the book, you're stuck with a pair of hella bland POV characters, and then when you finally get a new character who should be the most interesting part of the book, he ends up being just as bland as them, possibly more so. And you know, maybe I could handle it if the side characters were any more interesting. I know it's probably a cardinal writing sin to make your side characters more interesting than the POV cast, but fortunately, they evade that too, because all but one of the side characters are also bland as fuck. Eve's mother is supposed to be such an important part of her supposed characterization, and all she does is walk around and talk about how great science is. She tut-tuts about Eve and her friends, and then she just goes around posturing about how awesome she is. Like, I am Dr. Spiker, and I'm the most brilliant mind in here, and everyone else should grovel at my feet. And she is not nearly as hammy as that, but honestly, I wish she was. It'd still be shitty, but at least it'd be entertaining. And then the actual villains of the book, they really don't have any motivation other than just tinting their fingers and maniacally going, Nyah-ha-ha-ha! Science! The only character in this entire novel, between the main characters and the side characters, is Eve's best friend, Aislinn. And she is a breath of fresh air because she is funny. She has a backstory. She has character traits. She has a boyfriend who's involved with some really sketchy people, and she keeps trying to drag him out of it, but he keeps dragging her back in, and it's this really concerning back and forth, and her life gets put in danger several times. Aislinn's life is described so well that the reader starts to care. This is the you care more about the side characters sin that makes you not give a damn about the main characters because their lives are not nearly as interesting as those around them. There's even a point where Aislinn gets drawn into her own moral quandary because her boyfriend gets beaten up really badly at one point by people that he owes drug money to, and he's in the hospital, and Aislinn's waiting for him to get out of surgery, and Eve is there with her, and Eve has the revelation of, oh my gosh, Aislinn is just hoping that her boyfriend dies because it's easier for her to get out of this relationship like that than actually having to break up with him and then feel like she abandoned him. That's a really interesting question. That's a really deep and dark question. And it's something that you could write an entire book out of. But no, we don't get to focus on that question. We don't get to focus on the actual interesting part of the book. We have to deal with all the scientific ethical quandaries that in the end turn out to be a load of hoo-ha, and it's all because of the villain's twist. See, throughout the book, Solo has been convinced that Eve's mom is basically a mad scientist, and she's the one who's responsible for all the horrible experimentations, and he believes that she's also responsible for the death of his parents, who worked for her. And so he's convinced that his parents were these wonderful, awesome people, and Eve's mom stole all of their work, and she's been using it to do all of her evil science stuff in the secret lab in the bottom of her freaky Sauron tower. But the actual twist is that the freaky evil mad scientists were actually Snake's parents, and so his entire quest for revenge has actually been targeted at the wrong person because Eve's mom is actually totally innocent, and in fact she and her husband were being threatened by Solo's parents, not the other way around. So when Solo finds the villains, it turns out the villains are basically just fanatically worshipping the legacy of his parents, and I guess the legacy of his parents was just doing weird shit with science and with DNA just to see what would happen. So you're probably thinking, okay, Solo is a person who's very highly motivated by avenging his parents, and when he finds out that that would actually be a bad thing to do, he probably has a really huge crisis about it and has to rethink everything he knows about the company and about Eve's mom and Eve herself, right? Well, haha, wrong. See, earlier in the book, Solo actually gets a chance to expose all the crazy shit that happens at the company and take everyone down, including Eve's mom, but he doesn't. Why is that? Is it because he starts thinking about all that ethical stuff again and how Eve is touting that maybe it is all for the greater good, that maybe some weird experiments have to be done in order to create vaccines and stuff for people who are literally dying all over the world? No. Solo isn't motivated by anything like that. Solo is motivated because Eve is cute. And he doesn't want to make her sad, because putting her mom in jail would make her sad. But this twist, this villain's twist, it just made me so livid, because all of these ethical questions going around at the beginning about what sacrifices we should make for the greater good of science, and what scientific advancement means, and what the cost of it is, and what does it mean when the people who you've been trying to avenge for your whole life turn out to be the people you should have been targeting from a moral high ground in the first place, and now you can't because they're already dead. All of these important questions that the characters were wrestling with, the only things that they had going for them that made them interesting, all of a sudden everything is immediately absolved. Because Solo finds out about his parents being the real villains after already deciding that he wasn't going to expose Eve's mom, he basically is freed from having to grapple with any of the consequences of his decision. But even worse than this twist is the one question that this book had going for it, that one thing that I keep bringing up. What is the cost of scientific advancement? It's the question this book keeps asking, because if Eve's mom and her company are able to do all these great things, even if they have to do some crazy evil experiments behind the scenes, is it worth it? The answer is that yes, that cost is worth paying, but it's not because of any moral, high ground, greater good type answer. No, it's because since Eve's mom wasn't the one doing the bad stuff, she was just selling off the good stuff they were finding from those experiments without knowing that those experiments were going on. So really, you can do whatever you want with science, because you just have to let evil people do the dirty work. And then you can come in, and you can just grab all the nice stuff, and you can say, oh, I had no idea. And so the entire point of this morality play going through the entire novel was absolutely pointless! But yeah, in the end, the villains are just easily disposable. Aislinn is relegated to becoming Adam's runner-up love interest because Eve just found him too perfect. But you know, at least she has something warm and firm to curl up to at night. And then the book just ends in the middle of Eve and Solo making out in a tube, because science, I guess. I don't condone the destruction of books, but I would gladly smack this one with a hammer. It is so stupid, so trite, and at the end, completely pointless. It was an absolute waste of my time when I could be reading something much more interesting. And I've literally healed myself hoarse over the course of trying to record this review. I'm gonna go drink some water now and find some better sci-fi that, when it raises moral questions about science, actually gives a good answer for them. So until next time, I'll see you all later.